Huge ruling last week from the state's highest court, unanimously overturning the murder conviction of a Troy man, Adrian Thomas, convicted in 2009 of killing his 4-month-old son. It has to do with the cops lying to him and tainting, I guess, his confession to the crime. And we're joined by our legal analyst, Paul Harding from Martin Harding Mazzotti. Hello, Paul.
Good morning, Chuck.
So I guess this boils down to the cops can lie to you, but just there's a certain line about how much they can lie to you?
Exactly so, and I think that's probably been the story. I think that a lot of people who heard the story were kind of surprised as to what the police can do when they're having just a normal conversation with these potential defendants. And so deception is something the police use all the time. The question comes down to is whether the confession is voluntary or involuntary.
So in this case, they basically misled this guy, saying he had to tell him what he did to save the life of his child, and they also went way over the top with a few other things that basically what the court rule said he was basically coerced?
Yeah, they said it was coerced, and you've got a situation here where 21 times they said, well, your child is still alive. If you tell us how you did it, we'll be able to save the child. 67 times they kept saying, we know this is an accident. We know you didn't mean to do this. Tell us that you can go home. Well, that kind of stuff is what they do, and that kind of stuff is what they can continue to do when they're interrogating a witness. But here they kept adding things about, well, we're going to go arrest your wife, and it was more of looking at this case specifically and saying there were so many deceptions and there was so much misinformation going to the heart of it that he may have confessed just to kind of move on, and he was there for 7 hours one day, 2 hours the next day. So it didn't really change the law in New York. So big case for Adrian Thomas. Court of Appeals just said, hey, this is too much.
Well, in addition to that, the defense wanted to call an expert witness in police interrogation to basically say what they did was wrong, and they weren't allowed to call that witness. And
you wonder if the trial judge had allowed that witness to come forth and at least let the jury understand and get a sense of how difficult that interrogation was. Maybe the Court of Appeals doesn't do this, but yes, they did not allow that expert to come in, and now the Court of Appeals said, and remember, this was in the appellate division, and it was affirmed, meaning they affirmed the conviction, and all the justices did. So the Court of Appeals had to reach down and get that case, which they do very rarely, and in this case, they took the case, they pulled it out, and they overturned it. And the police are now going to have to at least look at this, and when they're interrogations, because the last thing they want is a full trial, someone in jail, and now there will be a retrial.
Speaking with our legal analyst, Paul Harding from Martin Harding and Mazzotti. Now, for the average Joe, let's take it to, because luckily, most of us aren't charged with murder. But let's say a routine traffic stop, and a cop says, if you tell me where your marijuana is, I'm not going to charge you. Just be honest with me. Can they lie to you there? And what, how far can they go for the average guy who got caught speeding or with a joint in his car?
They absolutely can. Now, in that situation, in these days, they might be telling the truth. Just tell us where it is. They take it. They step on it, and that's the end of it if it's a small amount. But no, they can say those things. You can produce contraband, and next thing you know, you could be in handcuffs. And you said, but the police said if I showed it to them, it would be okay. No, that's pretty routine investigation stuff. And I think if you're in a situation where you're not sure, and maybe you're doing something you shouldn't be doing, again, there's always that, I get kind of a movie line, but it's always that stuff that you hear, I want to speak to my attorney and don't want to say anything because what I say can and will be used against me.
And this ruling in this case, does this have larger implications statewide or nationwide or not?
It really doesn't. I mean, it came off that way. It just said, hey, here in Albany, 3rd Department, you went too far. To Kelly's point, had they allowed that expert to come in, there's some indication that they may have said, well, this is okay because we allowed the jury to hear that how rough of an interrogation it was and how their expert might have said this is influenced and maybe made the confession involuntary. So no, in an odd way, it's something for everyone to look at. Well, we can't go this far. But again, these facts are so fact-specific that I don't see it having a wide-range effect.
Hey, Paul, thanks. Appreciate it.
Okay, guys, thank you.
Paul Harding from Martin Harding Mazzotti, 1-800-LAW-1010.